So we're going to move now into a more elaborate, maybe a garden party or an evening do. Again, Victorian, fairly early in the period. And so we're starting by sectioning off. We have a centre part. We're sectioning off, as we have so many times in this period, with the sides into a T-section down from the centre parting. I'm going to pull the back up, and I'm pulling it up a fair distance this time. So working through, establishing a nice smooth style, comb those sides and the underneath up so that you have the whole thing very smooth and very clean. And then we're just going to use, again, an elastic just to hold the hair in place and nice and firm. Again, for a stage situation or anything where you've got to get several people ready, this works out quite nicely because you can establish your shape. And as I've said before, if you prefer to use a loose elastic, if you have someone to hold the hair for you, that works perfectly well as well. So we have that hair out of the way, and then I'm just going to use some light spray just to get all those little ends up. And then we're going to come around to the front. Now, I want to do a spiral here, something that we've done before, but this time, because I'm going to be working on the back, I want this to be a single area as opposed to 3 or 4 spirals or loops, which we've done before in ringlet form. So I'm taking all the hair, going to use some thermal spray on the hair, and then whether you want to use a regular roller and then some heat, or whether you want to use a heated roller is entirely up to you. I'm going to use a heated roller, and I'm going to put the hair in. Keep it flat, don't let it twist in your fingers. And then I should just roll that in one large piece to the top. And then you can just use your pin just to hold that in place. So it's one large area which you're just putting in a single roller. Thermal spray will make a big difference to this taking. If you want several ringlets, again, the main thing when you're doing period is that you establish a look that is relative and correct for the period. You'll see many movies that were done at different periods of time that are accurate in this story. Like in the 60s, there were some brilliant movies made about the war period, the Second World War. There were also movies made at that time about the gangster period in the 30s. But the difference was the makeup was the eyeliner was too heavy and the hair was back combed up, so it didn't actually match the period. So if you want to do 2 or 3 ringlets in the front and not one, that's perfectly okay because that would have been an established look at the time. You just want to make sure if you're using modern tools that you use them in a way that the look looks authentic to the period. I'm just smoothing this hair out. I'm just going to do that again because I want to make sure that I really get that nice and smooth. And you can see I'm pulling back from the face with this as well. We're going to come in, keep those ends flat and smooth, keep the hair on the roller. Bring the ends around. Make sure these ends go under because otherwise you're going to end up with a smooth or a sticking out bottom area. It's fairly bulky, so you need a hot roller that's going to accept a lot of hair and has a good amount of heat to it, or else I would suggest splitting it up, because if you split it up you can still get the movement into go into one section as opposed to two. And then I'm just going to hold this down so that we keep the flatness to the top. That's only if it tends to have sprung off your roller. I just want to make sure that stays down. Okay, so we're coming back into the back, which is our ponytail, as you know. But what I'm going to do is I'm adding a piece in this time. There's many different pieces that you can put in. This is literally one large piece of hair, which is like a long ponytail. And so the base of it is very small, it's just at the top here. And all I've done is split it into 3 areas, and I'm just braiding or plaiting those areas. I've left one just so you can see this, but basically I'm working down the hair and I'm just working into the hair into braids. And the reason is my model actually has a nice amount of hair today, but with a lot of the looks during this period, and especially if they were for more established or formal evenings or afternoons, they were often switches or shifts of hair that were put through into their own hair to elaborate or make them larger, or fill the sides out, or just increase the volume to the shape that they were building. It's also easier for someone to work on these pieces themselves off of their head and then place them if you didn't actually have a servant or somebody doing that for you. And so quite quickly I'm just working down on the 3rd braid. We'll be working with the pieces on different constructions that we do for making curls and waves in different looks from different periods. But as we've already established, for the Victorian period, ringlets, spirals, braids, plaits were all very popular looks. So we'll just work down to the bottom of this, and then I'll just use an elastic just to secure that hair. We're going to wrap this at the top, and you'll find it's just going to increase the shape that we're going to build. Okay, so now at the top, I'm just going to, above the ponytail, secure this with a couple of bobby pins or grips, and they're literally just feeding down into where that ponytail area is, so that we can just anchor that piece. Oops. I'm then going to lift the first braid, and I'm putting it around the natural hair, pulling it around several times. So what it's going to do is it's going to make this hair stand up. And then again, just using a bobby pin to anchor that in. Okay. Now with my other pieces, I'm dropping the hair slightly, and again I'm continuing to build my shape up. So you can see it gives me a lot more hair than I would normally have just if the hair was on its own. Continuing to just pin into place so that it gives us a little bit of softness to the back shape and a bit of lift into this top, bit of interest and more hair than we would normally be able to use if we were just doing this with her own hair, even though we do have a fair amount of hair. And these sort of things, you could work on these beforehand, so you could actually establish these shapes prior to working the actual hair on the head, and so the pieces can actually go on virtually finished. This one obviously is in the sense that it's braided, but you could do something a lot more complicated and just place it straight onto the head shape. Now I'm going to split the natural hair. And we're going to work with our thermal spray and a flat iron. So I'm just going to work on the back. I want to make this fairly strong as a shape. So we're going to put our iron in, lift the shape out, and then just pull and just turn on my ends. The lead's getting a little enthusiastic there. I'll move this section out of the way, and then we'll continue through the back, just flat ironing this out and smoothing this area. Once we have that center area nice and smooth, as you have with the rest of the hair, but obviously braiding it through and then establishing the extra piece, it makes it a little bit more intricate. But this we want nice and smooth because we're just going to rope twist this and give a soft finish. So a little working spray just over it after the thermal spray. Just pop your head forward a little, that's great. And then all we're going to do is take our section into 2 instead of 3, which we've done with the braiding. And then we're just going to cross these over each other and twist them as we go. So we're just going to twist those around, twist it around, and again. Now, rope twists will unravel as opposed to a braid, which obviously is 3 parts, so it's anchoring itself. And so this would undo itself like that if you let it. So we're just twisting down to the end, and then I'm holding it nice and firm. But what this is going to do is it's going to make the hair bend, sort of bend up on itself. So I'm going to first get an elastic just to hold the hair together. Again, it won't stop it from unraveling if I let it go now, which I'm not going to, but it will just hold it. So it's firm, so as I pull this up you can see it'll bend itself, which is what I want it to do, because then I'm going to feed this end under, and then I'll pin this out of the way. We can use some of our fancier pins in a minute, but I just really want to pin this and get the hair up towards the braided area at the top, towards the plait, and just anchor that in. And then as I pull this closer to the head, which is between the two loose braids at the side, then I can use one of my little tortoiseshell clips just to push into that and just to hold it in place. I want a looseness to it, but I obviously want to anchor it. It is a slightly more formal sort of look than we've had with some of the other looks. So just make sure that it's holding its place nicely. And then anything that's modern, which is basically the elastics, are just out of place and out of sight, so you don't see them. Move to the front, and we're going to unravel. As I say, you can work this with 1, 2 or 3 rollers, but we want this to come back into one shape. So again, I'm just going to reshape it around my finger. It'll loosen off, of course. It's bound to do that, but we're just going to hold it in place as if we've just taken it out of the roller, and then use a little spray. Just hold it in my hand for a minute. And then I'll let the shape go so that it just goes into that nice spiraled shape. It'll be as loose or as tight as you make it. You're the one obviously establishing each model, client or actor that you're doing, and so it'll be entirely up to you how that works. You might decide to decorate, or you may leave it as it is. That's again up to your choice. I'll work with some berries this time, and you can do the same, or you can use flowers. Were popular at the time. Anything that you know is relevant to the period and that would make sense. These can be in clusters or they can be individual, and these are the sort of things you can pick up quite easily even now. You know, they come from florists or from novelty shops, and it's the sort of thing that just establishes a look to a period. Dress it to the side or put it right the way through. Again, that's individual, and I always think that's okay, because hairdressers at the time, or even people dressing their hair at home, would have had slight variations. It really matters, what really matters is the look authentic to the period? Does it work for what we're trying to say and establish? Even greenery and leaves would work well, so it's entirely up to you how much you want to dress this up. Feathers work particularly well as well. But what we have is again the look of the spiral through the front, which we've done before. These can be soft or they can be very, very firm. It really depends on the look. I think the more youthful, the softer, and the more austere or older, you might want to make that a firmer curl. Separated from the back, and then we added this time a piece so that we could establish a larger braided area, which makes it more intricate through the sides. And then after that, we've done the spiral or the rope twist just to push that center area into a different sort of style. It could be braided through, or it could be lifted. It really is up to you. But that's just one more look for the Victorian period.